Greetings, everyone. My name is Cassandra Faye Floyd, also known as the Daughter of the Fates, and I am also the founder of Evolutionary Emergence. I'm not gonna lie. First of all, I know I'm late. I know it's 5:30. Those of you who are having a great time enjoying either your reread or re-listen of The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho, or if this is the first time you've ever heard or read the book. But I'm gonna be honest, I am wiped out. When I say wiped out, I have been bragging quite a bit about how mild the summer has been here. Very mild. Even though it is staggering hot today, I still have yet to turn my air conditioner on. Got the fan on, but I left the house at 7 o'clock this morning to finish getting a bunch of running around done that I've been embarking on since last week to get my car back on the road, right? And I've been in that hot ass sun all day. And when I tell you that I am beat, that I feel like even though it's been a really good day, the day went my way, everything in the day went my way, baby, I feel like I'm being punished. I feel like I'm getting my whole ass handed to me. It's hot as all hellfire out this joint on this day. And I am so wiped out. Like, whew. Anyway, I was like, let me not break mode of diligence and get up on this thing, do the reading for the day, especially since the reading was so good yesterday. I just forgot how good this book is. I'm gonna grab my water though. Man, it is so child, today is the day. It is hot out in this joint. Now we may get some reprieve as the full moon approaches here in a few days. She may have mercy on us and lighten the load a little bit. But on this day, when I say I'm hanging on by a thread, I'm about to pour me a bath of ice water and just go to sleep in that joint when I get off this call. Oh my God. It's staggering. Let me grab my water so I don't pass out over here. Right. I'm gonna tell you, I've been thinking a whole lot since yesterday because I read two things yesterday. Um, it's crazy hot. It's like exceptional hot. I'll remind you that if you're a Facebook user for whatever reason, um, StreamYard will not let me see who you are. So if you're tuning in from Facebook, make sure to shout yourself out. Let me know who it is that I'm talking to. But whoever it is that asked if it's Tucson hot, it's been a long time since I've been to Tucson, baby. But I would imagine we hot on y'all heels out this bitch on this day. It is stifling. Okay. So anyway, I've been thinking a lot, a whole lot. I've been doing so much running around, so much doing, trying to get my car back on the road. My car has been down and out for a long time, for about 2 years. I've been on public transportation. Got my old girl back on the road today, but it took. Oh, hey, Carlotta. All right, cool. Um, it took man, probably about 6 days with all the list of shit I had to get done to my car to get it mildly back in a safe and operable condition to be back on the road. I've been working day and night, literally, not figuratively, since Thursday to get my car on the road. And every single day, even Saturday and Sunday, every single day since then, I have spent some considerable amount of time dealing with my car. Smog tests and new tires and work under the hood and more work to come and all the goddamn things. So I've been in this bitch and it's freaking hot since Thursday every day dealing with this car to get my car back on the road. But today was the most hot that it's been. Like I feel like I've been assaulted because I was out in it all day. You feel me? Anyway, I'm just rambling, ranting, got an attitude about how hot it is, you feel me? Thanks, Carlotta. Appreciate it. Yeah, so anyway, but yesterday's reading, both of The Alchemist and the two missing chapters from Communion, The Female Search for Love, were just profound. And honestly, they were right on time given the fact that we are entering into a super blue moon on the 31st in a couple of days. And yeah, those readings were profound yesterday, man. Especially Communion. Because I'm guilty of what she talked about. And I forgot. I read the book before, but I just forgot what she talked about in the chapters about men. Women who love men and men who love, or looking for men who love, or something to that effect. And how easy it is. It's this fine line that we are walking on. It's this tightrope that we're walking on. It's this it's a fine line that we must maneuver, because it is all too easy to be reactionary. I won't even say reactionary. I will say easily responsive to the crimes committed by men. It is easily responsive to be responsive to the seeming complicity in that violence of other men, right? And in that ease, to be easily responsive to these things, it is equally easy to condemn and ignore the fact that there are some, very few, but some men in the world who have, for the most part of their lives, taken a righteous position in who they are as men, what that means to the rest of us, and have attempted to some degree to live with a level of integrity and attempt to really try to be good allies to the others of us human beings who typically suffer at the hands of men. That includes other men. And so yesterday was a profound reading because it did cause me last night, because I was up a long time after those readings. They really struck me, man. They really fucked me up. I was up till maybe 3 o'clock this morning writing and just really meditating on the reading, especially of Communion, The Female Search for Love by Bell Hooks. That was a really profound reading yesterday. And while I will never let men off the hook when it comes to their responsibility to ensure that the spaces that they share with others are safe spaces, that we as others are safe in space with men, that the burden of proof is theirs to ensure that we feel safe in space with them. And that's not just, when I say safety, I'm not just alluding to safety from injury. I am also talking about safety from emotional harm. You understand? And so, while I won't let them off the hook, as a group, while I will not let them off the hook, I will attempt to be better at acknowledging that there are men in the world, and I have met some of them. There are men in the world who, for the most part, are not complicit in the harm caused to the many at the hands of men, who do speak out in the midst of that harm or those aggressions, who, for the most part, are always attempting to demonstrate that they are and be the best that they can be of allies to women and others. I will be better at acknowledging the few men that I know personally and the men that I encounter in the future, that there I won't give no blanket benefit of the doubt, because I have had that issue too. But I will say I will be better at acknowledging that in the future. That's what that reading did for me last night. It really did. I have a friend that I've known for a very long time, for about 15 years, that when I met this person, they were a woman, born female. And by the time that they were going on their own way, they were in the process of transition. And today they are fully transitioned as male. I talked to this person about 3 months ago about everything. Like, it's been so long since we caught up, and so we were kind of catching up on everything. And this person is a truck driver now, a long distance truck driver. And this person admitted to me something that I've heard a few other times, because I have clients that are transgender, and all of my transgender clients are female to male clients, which I find interesting. All of my transgender clients are female to male transitioners. The few gender non-conforming or non-binary clients that I have were all born female, but kind of lean more towards or identify more towards masculinity. I find this fascinating, and I haven't sat really a long time with why that has been, that this is who my clients are. Um, but there is a striking and uncanny similarity between them all. Striking. It would be interesting just with my clients to conduct my own personal sociology experiment because none of them know each other. And for their stories to be as similar as they are is striking. I say this because one of these similarities that all of them have mentioned, including my transgender friend who's the truck driver, is that one of the difficult things about being male identified, transgender, female to male, or even as a non-binary or gender non-conforming person, being a little bit more masculine in presentation than feminine, right? The one thing that has been said almost verbatim by each of them is that especially the transgender men, when they transitioned, the thing that was the hardest for them to get used to was the isolation that they experienced as men. That they had taken for granted that living as female, there is a certain space that we give to other females, even the ones that we don't know as women. That we are not fearful in general of other women, so we're more likely to speak to other women when we see them in public, or smile at other women when we see them in public. Small, subtle things, but that we don't even think about or take for granted until this person who has lived as female for most of their life, maybe transitioned because he transitioned, I believe he was 24 when he finally completed his transition. So, had enough time living as female to long for, to miss the solidarity, the camaraderie, the sisterhood, the connection that just naturally seems to exist among women that, quote, we deny men. We do not as freely give that kind of open affection and expression to men. And so my friend was saying that early into his transition, it was very hard for him. He was very depressed for his first year or so after transition because he felt so isolated. He felt so lonely because in his mind, he can still do that. He can approach women and be like, hey, how you doing? La, la, la. Whatever. And women would openly reject him or revile him, right? Like, and he said, I recognize why they do it because I lived as female. I remember why I did it. Being innately afraid of harm that comes from men. He said, but there is no outlet for trans men or for men for that matter to express the extreme amount of loneliness that we experience in this separation, quote, between the sexes. And that having experienced that connection and that togetherness that women often will naturally give to each other, having experienced it, he said, I think I long for it more than most men because I know what it felt like. I remember, what it felt like, how good it felt to be in circle with, to be in relationship with women as a woman. And that shit struck me because it is an ongoing theme among at least the people that I know personally who are female to male transitioners. This is it's a common theme, this loneliness, this isolation, this longing or missing this affection that comes from having females as friends. And I really empathized with that. I really did. But at the same time that I was able to empathize with this, I also I also called on each of them when they expressed that you have to be the voice in male spaces that helps men to end their own isolation. Women in general in the world, women in general, like love men in general. I'm just talking about as people. They don't spend their early years, you know, running away from in fear, straying away from men. If that's the case, those of us who consider ourselves heterosexual, despite what our trauma with men may be, would never pursue relationships with men. If we didn't, like I tell y'all all the time, I love the affection of men. I love making love to men, right? There is something that I cannot articulate that I appreciate when I am close to men, not just males as lovers, men as friends. I have many male friends, right? So, even despite the enormous amount of suffering that women have done, that females have experienced at the hands of men, if that was any indication, that, or if that was the general, if that was any general indication of women's hatred of, we man haters and all that bullshit, motherfucker, there wouldn't be no babies being made. None of you Y chromosome possessing human beings would be getting no ass. You understand? Y'all would have been asked out if we, as women, seeing you, whether we can articulate it or not, seeing you as us, seeing you subconsciously as a partner created out of the body of our mother, to whom we are part of. Women are part of her body, are the direct descendants of her. So it's why we can still love you. It's why we can still hold out hope for you, despite all the evidence in the world that teaches us that we should fear for our lives around you, that we should not be having any kind of relationship with any of you ever, right? Like, this is what objectivity would tell us based on our relationship to you, based on statistics about harm caused by you against us and all of that shit. So I was like, you can be I'm talking about these transgender clients and friends of mine. You have the insight, you have the ability now to be in spaces with men and to be able to better articulate to men what their responsibility is at righting these horrible wrongs that isolate them from women, that cause the self-isolation, that cause women that they may have been attracted to revile them out of fear for their lives, fear for their safety, and so on and so forth. I'm saying this because the reading was profound yesterday and it just stayed with me all night. That was a really long preface that I didn't intend to make, but it came through and I felt like it was important. This is the world that I want to create. I can never reiterate it enough. I want to create a world where all are made well, where men and women and all the genders between can experience for the first time in an age what it feels like in our bodies to experience happiness unlike we have ever experienced. This is what I want for the world. It is what I know we have the ability to create. I know that. I know that deep inside of us, it is what we all long for, is oneness, to be our unique and beautiful selves and still experience oneness. not independence, oneness, connection in our uniqueness, to be appreciated for our uniqueness within the context of the whole. And this reading yesterday was just really sobering for me because it was, as a minister, until we decide on what my label is, as a reverend, as a doctor, as a healer, as a witch, right? As a daughter, as a mother, as a grandmother, as a wife, as a stepmother, as a godmother, all these labels. That's what I signed up for. That's what I signed up for. But I came down here. That's what I signed up for. That no matter how trying my experiences were, I'm sorry about the StreamYard. If you're tuning in via StreamYard, I'm so sorry. I'm probably just going to have to, I don't know, because this has been ongoing for a while now and I don't know what to make of it. I've tried everything. But, this is what I signed up for, is to, despite harms that have been committed against me, that I would still push through as best I could and be one who constantly articulates what the world can be in real time, what the potential is in real time, what the mother requires of us in real time. And part of that is to not deny human beings the love that is required for them to be made well, for them to be made better. So I just want to make that commitment. I want to make a commitment. I want to recommit myself that no matter how much I may rant and rave sometimes, that I always want to come back to center. I always want to come back to what I believe are the possibilities for us. That is for the reestablishment of oneness on this planet. Through the celebration of and the respect of individual uniqueness, still recognizing all of that as a part of the body of the one. And so what I beg is that no matter how many videos you've seen me make about on any given day, how some male, some Y chromosome possessing human has set me the hell off, know that when I speak about these things, it is me blowing off the steam required to come back to center and say that above all things, I love us. I love human beings. I do. And even in my day-to-day reaction, I don't deny men the ability to commune with me, to get to know me, to greet me, to get, to meet me. I don't deny them that. I don't, unless they cross me. But in general, I don't deny them that way. And I do want to always be called. I'm calling on y'all too to keep me honest, to call me back to center, that no matter how people piss me off, that the mother is at work on our asses. And those of us who have signed this energetic heavenly agreement to make the world well, to make the world new, to allow a space, to create a space for her to re-become, for her to reemerge. And part of that is to participate in a process where her sons too can be made well. You understand? So that's what that reading did for me yesterday. It was really goddamn profound. And I wanted to preface by saying that. Now, so that I can stay on schedule, because my intention is still to finish this book by Wednesday, no later than Thursday. So for those of you who might be tuning in late, I will continue the reading of The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho, and we'll get started. The boy spent a sleepless night. 2 hours before dawn, he awoke one of the boys who slept in his tent and asked him to show him where Fatima lived. They went to her tent, and the boy gave his friend enough gold to buy a sheep. Then he asked his friend to go into the tent where Fatima was sleeping and to awaken her and tell her that he was awaiting outside. The young Arab did as he was asked and was given enough gold to buy yet another sheep. "Now leave us alone," said the boy to the young Arab. The Arab returned to his tent to sleep, proud to have helped the counselor of the oasis and happy at having enough money to buy himself some sheep. Fatima appeared at the entrance to the tent. The two walked out among the palms. The boy knew that it was a violation of the tradition, but that didn't matter to him now. "I'm going away," he said, "and I want you to know that I am coming back. I love you because—" "Don't say anything," Fatima interrupted. "One is loved because one is loved. No reason is needed for loving." But the boy continued, "I had a dream, and I met with a king. I sold crystal and crossed the desert. And because the tribes declared war, I went to the well, seeking the alchemist. So I love you because the entire universe conspired to help me find you." The two embraced, and it was the first time either had touched the other. "I'll be back," the boy said. "Before this, I always looked to the desert with longing," said Fatima. "Now it will be with hope. My father went away one day, but he returned to my mother, and he has always come back since then." They said nothing else. They walked for a bit further among the palms, and then the boy left her at the entrance of her tent. "I'll return just as your father came back to your mother," he said. He saw that Fatima's eyes were filled with tears. "You're crying." "I am a woman of the desert," she said, averting her face. "But above all, I am a woman." Fatima went back to her tent, and when daylight came, she went out to do her chores. She went out to do the chores she had done for years. But everything had changed. The boy was no longer at the oasis, and the oasis would never again have the same meaning it had had only yesterday. It would no longer be a place with 50,000 palm trees and 300 wells, where the pilgrims arrived, relieved at the end of their long journeys. From that day on, the oasis would be an empty place for her. From that day on, it was the desert that would be important. She would look to it every day and would try to guess which star the boy was following in search of his treasure. She would have to send her kisses on the wind, hoping that the wind would touch the boy's face and would tell him that she was alive, that she was waiting for him, a woman awaiting a courageous man in search of his treasure. From that day on, the desert would represent only one thing to her: the hope for his return. "Don't think about what you've left behind," the alchemist said to the boy as they began to ride across the sands of the desert. "Everything is written in the soul of the world, and there it will stay forever. Men dream more about coming home than about leaving," the boy said. He was already reaccustomed to the desert's silence. "If what one finds is made of pure matter, it will never spoil, and one can always come back. If one if what you had found was only a moment of light, like the explosion of a star, you would find nothing on your return." The man was speaking the language of alchemy, but the boy knew that he was referring to Fatima. It was difficult not to think about what he had left behind. The desert, with its endless monotony, put him to dreaming. The boy could still see the palms, the wells, and the face of the woman he loved. He could see the Englishman at his experiments and the camel driver who was a teacher without realizing it. Maybe the alchemist has never been in love, the boy thought. The alchemist rode in front, with the falcon on his shoulder. The bird knew the language of the desert well, and whenever they stopped, he flew off in search of game. On the first day he returned with a rabbit, and on the second with two birds. At night they spread their sleeping gear and kept their fires hidden. The desert nights were cold and were becoming darker and darker as the phases of the moon passed as the phases of the moon passed. They went on for a week, speaking only of the precautions they needed to follow in order to avoid the battles between the tribes. The war continued, and at times the wind carried the sweet, sickly smell of blood. Battles had been fought nearby, and the wind reminded the boy that there was the language of the omens, always ready to show him what his eyes had failed to observe. On the seventh day, the alchemist decided to make camp earlier than usual. The falcon flew off to find game, and the alchemist offered his water container to the boy. "You are almost at the end of your journey," said the alchemist. "I congratulate you for having pursued your personal legend." "And you've told me nothing all along the way," said the boy. "I thought you were going to teach me some of the things that you know. A while ago, I rode through the desert with a man who had books on alchemy, but I wasn't able to learn anything from them." "There is only one way to learn," the alchemist answered. "It's through action, baby. Okay? It's through action. Everything you need to know you have learned through your journey. You need to learn only one thing more." The boy wanted to know what that was, but the alchemist was searching the horizon looking for the falcon. "Why are you called the alchemist?" "Because that's what I am." "And what went wrong with the other alchem? What went wrong when other alchemists tried to make gold and were unable to do so?" "They were looking only for gold, baby. They were looking only for gold," his companion answered. "They were seeking the treasure of their personal legend without wanting actually to live out their personal legend." Oh, oh my God. "What is it that I still need to know?" the boy asked. But the alchemist continued to look to the horizon, and finally the falcon returned with their meal. They dug a hole and lit their fire in it, so that the light of the flames would not be seen. "I am an alchemist simply because I am an alchemist," he said, as he prepared the meal. "I learned the science from my grandfather, who learned from his father, and so on, back to the creation of the world. In those times, the masterwork could be written simply on an emerald, but men began to reject simple things and to write tracts and interpretations and philosophical studies. They also began to feel that they knew a better way than others had, yet the emerald tablet is still alive today." "What was written on the emerald tablet?" the boy wanted to know. The alchemist began to draw in the sand and completed his drawing in less than 5 minutes. As he drew, the boy thought of the old king and the plaza where they had met that day. It seemed as if it had taken place years and years ago. "This is what was written on the emerald tablet," said the alchemist when he had finished. The boy tried to read what was written in the sand. "It's a code," said the boy, a bit disappointed. "It looks like what I saw in the Englishman's books." "No," the alchemist answered. "It's like the flight of those two hawks. It can't be understood by reason alone." The emerald tablet is a direct passage to the soul of the world. These wise men understood that this natural world is only an image and a copy of paradise. The existence of this world is simply a guarantee that there exists a world that is perfect. God created the world so that through its visible objects, men could understand his spiritual teachings and the marvels of his wisdom. That's what I mean by action. "Should I understand the emerald tablets?" asked the boy. "Perhaps, if you were in a laboratory of alchemy, this would be the right time to study the best way to understand the emerald tablet. But you are in the desert, so immerse yourself in it. The desert will give you an understanding of the world. In fact, anything on the face of this earth will do that. You don't even have to understand the desert. All you have to do is contemplate a simple grain of sand. A simple grain of sand, and you will see in it all the marvels of creation." "How do I immerse myself in the desert?" "Listen to your heart It knows all things because it came from the soul of the world, and it will one day return there. They crossed the desert for another 2 days in silence. The alchemist had become much more cautious because they were approaching the area where the most violent battles were being waged. As they moved along, the boy tried to listen to his heart. It was not easy to do. In earlier times, his heart had always been ready to tell its story, but lately that wasn't true. There had been times when his heart spent hours telling of its sadness, and at other times it had become so emotional over the desert sunrise that the boy had hid his tears. His heart beat fastest when it spoke to the boy of treasure, and more slowly when the boy stared entranced at the endless horizons of the desert. But his heart was never quiet, even when the boy and the alchemist had fallen into silence. Why do we have to listen to our hearts? The boy asked when they had made camp that day. Because wherever your heart is, that is where you will find your treasure. But my heart is agitated, the boy said. It is it has dreams. It gets emotional and it's become passionate over a woman of the desert. It asks things of me and it keeps things from me. It keeps me from things excuse me, and it keeps me from sleeping many nights when I'm thinking about her. Well, that's good. Your heart is alive. Keep listening to what it has to say. During the next 3 days, the two travelers passed by a number of armed tribesmen and saw others on the horizon. The boy's heart began to speak of fear. It told him stories it had heard from the soul of the world, stories of men who sought to find their treasure and never succeeded. Sometimes it frightened the boy with the idea that he might not find his treasure or that he might die there in the desert. At other times, it told the boy that it was satisfied. It had found love and riches. My heart is a traitor, the boy said to the alchemist when they had paused to rest the horses. It doesn't want me to go on. That makes sense, the alchemist answered. Naturally, it's afraid that in pursuing your dream, you might lose everything you've won. Well, well then, why should I continue to listen to my heart? Because you will never again be able to keep it quiet. Even if you pretend not to have heard what it tells you, it will always be there inside you, repeating to you what you're thinking about life and about the world. You mean I should listen even if it's treasonous? Treason is a blow that comes unexpectedly. If you know your heart well, it will never be able to do that to you because you'll know and its dreams and wishes and will know how to deal with them. God. Mm. You will never be able to escape from your heart. So it's better to listen to what it has to say. That way you'll never have to fear an unanticipated blow. The boy continued to listen to his heart as they crossed the desert. He came to understand its dodges and tricks, and to accept it was as it was. He lost his fear and forgot about his need to go back to the oasis because, one afternoon, his heart told him that it was happy. Even though I complain sometimes, it said, it's because I'm the heart of a person, and people's hearts are that way. People are afraid to pursue their most important dreams because they feel that they don't deserve them, or they'll be unable to achieve them. When their hearts become fearful just thinking of loved ones who go away forever, or of moments that could have been good but weren't, or of treasures that might have been found but were forever hidden in the sands. Because when these things happen, we suffer terribly. My heart is afraid that it will have to suffer, the boy told the alchemist one night as they looked up at the moonless sky. Tell your heart that the fear of suffering is worse than suffering itself. Oh my God. Mm, mm, mm. Oh my God. Shower. Tell your heart that the fear of suffering is worse than the suffering itself. and that no heart has ever suffered when it goes in search of its dreams, because every second of the search is a second's encounter with God and with eternity. Every second of the search is an encounter with God. The boy told his heart. When I have been truly searching for my treasure, every day has been luminous because I've known that every hour was a part of the dream that I would find it. When I have been truly searching for my treasure, I've discovered things along the way that I never would have seen had I not had the courage to try things that seemed impossible for a shepherd to achieve. So his heart was quiet for an entire afternoon. That night, the boy slept deeply, and when he awoke, his heart began to tell him things that came from the soul of the world. Oh, God. It's said that all people who are happy have God within them, and that happiness could be found in a grain of sand from the desert, as the alchemist had said, because a grain of sand is a moment of creation, and the universe has taken millions of years to create it. Everyone on earth has a treasure that awaits him, his heart said. We people's hearts, seldom say much about these treasures because people no longer want to go in search of them. We speak of them only to children. Later, we simply let life proceed in its own direction towards its own fate. But unfortunately, very few follow the path laid out for them, the path to their personal legends and to happiness. Most people see the world as a threatening place, and because they do, the world turns out, indeed, to be a threatening place. So we, their hearts, speak more and more softly. We never stop speaking out, but we begin to hope that our words won't be heard. We don't want people to suffer because they don't follow their hearts. Why don't people's hearts tell them to continue to follow their dreams? The boy asked the alchemist. Because that's what makes a heart suffer the most. A heart and hearts don't like to suffer. From then on, the boy understood his heart. He asked it, please, never to stop speaking to him. He asked, he asked that when he wandered far from his dreams, his heart press him and sound the alarm. Oh my God. Oh shit. Oh my God. He asked when he wandered far from his dreams. Whew, when he wandered far from his dreams, his heart pressed him and should sound the alarm. The boy swore. Whew, shit. The boy swore that every time he heard the alarm, he would heed its message. That night, he told all of this to the alchemist, and the alchemist understood that the boy's heart had returned to the soul of the world. So what should I do now? The boy asked. Continue in the direction of the pyramid, said the alchemist, and continue to pay heed to the omens. Your heart is still capable of showing you where the treasure is. Is that the only? Oh my God. Is that the one thing I still needed to know? No, the alchemist answered. What you still need to know is this. Before a dream is realized, the soul of the world tests everything that was learned along the way. It does this not because it is evil, but so that we can, in addition to realizing our dreams, master the lessons we've learned as we've moved towards them. That's the point at which most people give up. That's the point. It's the point at which, as we say, the language of the desert, one dies of thirst just when the palm trees have appeared on the horizon. Oh shit, y'all. Mm. Oh my God. Every search begins with beginner's luck, and every search ends with the victors being severely tested. The boy remembered an old proverb from his country. It said that the darkest hour of the night came just before the dawn. On the following day, the first clear sign of danger appeared. Three armed tribesmen approached and asked what the boy and the alchemist were doing there. I'm hunting with my falcon, the alchemist answered. We're going to have to search you to see whether you are armed, one of the tribesmen said. The alchemist dismounted slowly, and the boy did the same. Why are you carrying money? Asked the tribesman when he had searched the boy's bag. I need it to get to the pyramids, he said. The tribesman who was searching the alchemist's belongings found a small crystal flask filled with a liquid and a yellow glass egg that was slightly larger than a chicken's egg. What are these things? He asked. That's the philosopher's stone and the elixir of life. It's the master work of the alchemist. Whoever swallows that elixir will never be sick again, and a fragment of that stone turns any metal into gold. The Arabs laughed at him, and the alchemist laughed along. They thought his answer was amusing, and they allowed the boy and the alchemist to proceed with all their belongings. Are you crazy? The boy asked the alchemist when they had moved on. What did you do that for? To show you one of life's simple lessons, the alchemist answered. When you possess great treasures within you and try to tell others of them, seldom are you believed. Oh my God. Y'all, this is ministering. Oh my God. Oh my God. He said to show you one of life's simple lessons. When you possess great treasures within you and try to tell others of them, seldom are you believed. Y'all, oh my God. Oh. They continued across the desert. With every day that passed, the boy's heart became more and more silent. It no longer wanted to know about things of the past or future. It was content simply to contemplate the desert and to drink with the boy from the soul of the world. The boy and his heart had become friends, and neither was capable now of betraying the other. When his heart spoke to him, it was to provide a stimulus to the boy and to give him strength, because the days of silence there in the desert were wearisome. His heart told the boy what his strongest qualities were: his courage in having given up his sheep and in trying to live out his personal legend, and his enthusiasm during the time he had worked at the crystal shop. And his heart told him something else that the boy had never noticed. It told the boy of dangers that had threatened him, but that he had never perceived. His heart said that one time it had hidden the rifle the boy had taken from his father, because of the possibility that the boy might wound himself. And it reminded the boy of the day when he had been ill and vomiting out in the fields, after which he had fallen into a deep sleep. There had been two thieves farther ahead who were planning to steal the boy's sheep and murder him. But since the boy hadn't passed by, they had decided to move on, thinking that he had changed his roots. Oh my God. Does a man's heart always help him? The boy asked the alchemist. Mostly just the hearts of those who are trying to realize their personal legends. But they do not help children, drunkards, and the elderly too. Oh, wait, excuse me. But they do help children, drunkards, and the elderly too. Does that mean I'll never run into danger? It means only that the heart does what it can, the alchemist said. One afternoon, they passed by the encampment of one of the tribes. At each corner of the camp were Arabs garbed in beautiful white robes with arms at the ready. The men were smoking their hookahs and trading stories from the battlefield. No one paid any attention to the two travelers. There's no danger, the boy said when they had moved past the encampment. The alchemist sounded angry. Trust in your heart, but never forget that you're in the desert. When men are at war with one another, the soul of the world can hear the screams of battle. No one fails to suffer in the consequences of everything under the sun. All things are one, the boy thought. And then, as if the desert wanted to demonstrate that, the alchemist was right. Two horsemen appeared from behind the travelers. You can't go any further, one of them said. You're in the area where tribes are at war. I'm not going very far, the alchemist answered, looking straight into the eyes of the horseman. They were silent for a moment, and then agreed that the boy and the alchemist could move along. The boy watched the exchange with fascination. You dominated those horsemen with the way you looked at them, he said. Your eyes show the strength of your soul, the alchemist answered. That's true, the boy thought. He had noticed that in the midst of the multitude of armed men back at the encampment, there had been one who stared fixedly at the two. He had been so far away that his face wasn't even visible, but the boy was certain that he had been looking at them. Finally, when they had crossed the mountain range that extended along the entire horizon, the alchemist said they were only 2 days from the pyramids. If we're going to go our separate way, If we're going to go our separate ways soon, the boy said, then teach me now about alchemy. You already know about alchemy. It is about penetrating the soul of the world and discovering the treasure that has been reserved for you. No, that's not what I mean. I'm talking about transforming lead into gold. The alchemist fell as silent as the desert and answered the boy only after they had stopped to eat. Everything in the universe evolved, he said. And for wise men, gold is the metal that evolved the furthest. Don't ask me why. I don't know why. I just know that the tradition is always right. Men have never understood the words of the wise. So gold, instead of being seen as a symbol of evolution, became the basis for conflict. Oh my God. Oh. Mm, mm, mm. I forgot. There are many languages spoken by things, the boy said. There was a time when, for me, a camel's whinnying, was nothing more than whinnying. Then it became a signal of danger. And finally, it became just whinnying again. But then he stopped. The alchemist probably already knew all that. I have known I have known true alchemists, the alchemist continued. They locked themselves in their laboratories and tried to evolve, as gold had. And they found the philosopher's stone because they understood that when something evolves, everything around that thing evolves as well. Others stumbled upon the stone by accident. They already had the gift, and their souls were readier for such things than souls of others. But they don't count. They're quite rare. And then, but they don't count. They're quite rare. And then there were the others who were interested only in gold. Listen, y'all. Then there were those who were interested only in gold. They never found the secret. They forgot that lead, copper, and iron have their own personal legends to fulfill. And anyone who interferes with the personal legend of another thing never will discover his own. Oh my God. The alchemist's words echoed out like a curse. He reached over and picked up a shell from the ground. This desert was once a sea, he said. I noticed that, the boy answered. The alchemist told the boy to place the shell over his ear. He had done that many times when he was a child and had heard the sound of the sea. The sea has lived, interesting. The sea has lived on in this shell because that is its personal legend. And it will never cease doing so until the desert is once again covered by water. They mounted their horses and rode out into the direction of the pyramids of Egypt. The sun was setting when the boy's heart sounded. The sun was setting. Excuse me, my IG live just discontinued. So give me just a second. Um, I think that's it. Um, the sun was setting when the boy's heart sounded a danger signal. They were surrounded by gigantic dunes, and the boy looked. Let's see. And the boy looked at the alchemist to see whether he had sensed anything, but he appeared to be unaware of any danger. 5 minutes later, the boy saw two horsemen awaiting ahead of them. Before he could say anything to the alchemist, the two horsemen had become 10, and then 100, and then they were everywhere in the dunes. They were tribesmen dressed in blue, with black rings surrounding their turbans. Their faces were hidden behind blue veils, with only their eyes showing. Even from a distance, their eyes conveyed the strength of their souls, and their eyes spoke of death. The two were taken to a nearby military camp. A soldier shoved the boy and the alchemist into a tent where the chief was holding a meeting with his staff. "These are the spies," said one of them. "We're just travelers," the alchemist answered. "You were seen at the enemy camp 3 days ago, and you were talking with one of the troops there." "I am just a man who wanders the desert and knows the stars," said the alchemist. "I have no information about troops or about the movement of the tribes. I was simply acting as a guide for my friend here." "Who is your friend?" the chief asked. "An alchemist," said the alchemist. "He understands the forces of nature, and he wants to show you his extraordinary powers." The boy listened quietly and fearfully. "What is a foreigner doing here?" asked another of the men. "He has brought money to give to your tribe," said the alchemist before the boy could say a word, and seizing the boy's bag, the alchemist gave the gold coins to the chief. The Arab accepted them without a word. There was enough there to buy a lot of weapons. "What is an alchemist?" he finally asked. "It's a man who understands nature and the world. If he wanted to, he could destroy this camp just with the force of the wind." The men laughed. They were used to the ravages of war and knew that the wind could not deliver them a fatal blow. Yet each felt his heart beat a bit faster. They were men of the desert, and they were fearful of sorcerers. "I want to see him do it then," said the chief. "He needs 3 days," answered the alchemist. "He is going to transform himself into the wind, just to demonstrate his powers. If he can't do so, we humbly offer you our lives for the honor of your tribe." You can't offer me something that is already mine," the chief said arrogantly, but he granted the travelers 3 days. The boy was shaken with fear, but the alchemist helped him out of the tent. Don't let them see that you're afraid," the alchemist said. "They are brave men, and they despise cowards." But the boy couldn't even speak. He was able to do so only after they had walked through the center of the camp. There was no need to imprison them. The Arabs simply confiscated their horses. So once again, the world had demonstrated its many languages. The desert, only moments ago, had been endless and free, and now it was an impenetrable wall. "You gave them everything I had," the boy said. Everything, everything I've saved in my entire life." "Well, what good would it be to you? What good would it be to you if you had to die?" the alchemist answered. "Your money saved us for 3 days. It's not often that money saves a person's life." But the boy was too frightened to listen to words of wisdom. He had no idea how he was going to transform himself into the wind. He wasn't an alchemist. The alchemist asked one of the soldiers for some tea and poured some on the boy's wrists. A wave of relief washed over him, and the alchemist muttered some words that the boy didn't understand. Don't give in to your fears, said the alchemist in a strangely gentle voice. If you do, you won't be able to talk to your heart. But I have no idea how to turn myself into the wind. If a person is living out his personal legend, he knows everything he needs to know. There is only one thing that makes a dream impossible to achieve: the fear of failure. I'm not afraid of failing. It's just that I don't know how to turn myself into the wind. Well, you'll have to learn. Your life depends on it. But what if I can't? Then you'll die in the midst of trying to realize your personal legend. That's a lot better than dying like millions of other people who never even knew what their personal legends were. But don't worry, the alchemist continued. Usually the threat of death makes people a lot more aware of their lives. The first day passed. There was a major battle nearby, and a thunder and a number of wounded were brought back to the camp. The dead soldiers were replaced by others, and life went on. Death doesn't change anything, the boy thought. You could have died later on, a soldier said to the body of one of his companions. You could have died after peace had been declared, but in any case, you were going to die. At the end of the day, the boy went looking for the alchemist, who had taken his falcon out into the desert. I still have no idea how to turn myself into the wind, the boy repeated. Remember what I told you. The world is only the visible aspect of God. And that, what alchemy does, is to bring spiritual perfection into contact with the material plane. What are you doing? Feeding my falcon. If I'm not able to turn myself into the wind, we're going to die, the boy said. Why feed your falcon? You're the one who may die. You're the one who may die, the alchemist said. I already know how to turn myself into the wind. On the second day, the boy climbed to the top of a cliff near the camp. The sentinels allowed him to go. They had already heard about the sorcerer who could turn himself into the wind, and they didn't want to go near him. In any case, the desert was impassable. He spent the entire afternoon of the second day looking out over the desert and listening to his heart. The boy knew the desert sensed his fear. They both spoke the same language. On the third day, the chief met with the officers. He called the alchemist to the meeting and said, Let's go see the boy who turns himself into the wind. Let's, the alchemist answered. The boy took them to the cliff where he had been on the previous day. He told them all to be seated. It's going to take a while, the boy said. We're in no hurry, the chief answered. We are men of the desert. The boy looked out over the horizon. There were mountains in the distance, and there were mountains in the distance, and there were dunes, rocks, and plants that insisted on living where survival seemed impossible. There was the desert that had wandered for so many months. They had wandered for so many months. Despite all that time, he knew only a small part of it. Within that small part, he found an Englishman, caravans, tribal wars, and an oasis with 50,000 palm trees and 300 wells. What do you want here today? The desert asked him. Didn't you spend enough time looking at me yesterday? Somewhere you are holding the person I love, the boy said. So when I look out over your sands, I am also looking at her. I want to return to her, and I need your help so that I can turn myself into the wind. What is love? The desert asked. Love is the falcon's flight over your sands, because for him, you are a green field from which he always returns with game. He knows your rocks, your dunes, and your mountains, and you are generous to him. The falcon's beak carries bits of me myself, the desert said. For years I care for his game, feeding it with the little water that I have, and then I show him where the game is. And one day, as I enjoy the fact that the game thrives on my surface, the falcon dives out of the sky and takes away what I have created. But that's why you created the game in the first place, the boy answered, to nourish the falcon, and the falcon then nourishes man, and eventually man will nourish your sands, when the game will once again flourish. That's how the world goes. So, is that what love is? Yes, that is what love is. It's what makes the game become the falcon become man, and man, in his turn, the desert. It's what turns lead into gold and what makes gold return to earth. I don't understand what you're talking about, the desert said, but you can at least understand that somewhere in your sands there is a woman waiting for me. And that's why I have to return. That is why I have to turn myself into the wind. The desert didn't answer him for a few moments. Then it told him, I'll give you my sands to help the wind blow, but alone I can't do anything. You have to ask for help from the wind. A breeze began to blow. The tribemen watched the boy from a distance, talking among themselves in a language the boy didn't understand. The alchemist smiled. The wind approached the boy and touched his face. It knew of the boy's talk with the desert, because the winds know everything. They blow across the world without a birthplace and with no place to die. Help me, the boy said. One day you carried the voice of my loved one to me. Who taught you to speak the language of the desert and the wind? My heart, the boy answered. The wind has many names. In that part of the world, it was called Sirocco, because it brought moisture from the oceans to the east. In the distant land the boy came from, they called it Levanter, because they believed that it brought with it the sands of the desert and the screams of the Moorish wars. Perhaps in the places beyond the pastures where his sheep lived, men thought that the wind came from Andalusia. But actually, the wind came from no place at all, nor did it go to any place. That's why it was stronger than the desert. Someone might one day plant trees in the desert and even raise sheep there, but never would they harness the wind. You can't be the wind said. We're two very different things. That's not true, the boy said. I learned the alchemist's secrets in my travels. I have inside me the winds, the deserts, the oceans, the stars, and everything created in the universe. We were all made by the same hand, and we have the same soul. I want to be like you, able to reach every corner of the world, cross the seas, blow away the sands that cover my treasure, and to carry the voice of the woman I love. I heard what you were talking about the other day with the alchemist, the wind said. He said that everything has its own personal legend, that people can't turn themselves into the wind. Just teach me to be the wind for a few moments, the boy said, so you and I can talk about the limitless possibilities of people and the winds. The wind's curiosity was aroused. Something that had never happened before. It wanted to talk about those things, but it didn't know how to turn a man into the wind. And look how many things the wind already knew how to do. It created deserts, sank ships, failed forests, blew through cities filled with music and strange noises. It felt that it had no limits, yet here was a boy saying that there were other things the wind should be able to do. This is what we call love, the boy said, seeing that the wind was close to granting his request, what he requested. When you are loved, you can do anything in creation. When you are loved, there is no need at all to understand what's happening, because everything happens within you, and even men can turn themselves into the wind. As long as the wind helps, of course. The wind was a proud being, and it was becoming irritated with what the boy was saying. It commenced to blow harder, raising the desert sands. But finally, it had to recognize that, even making its way around the world, it didn't know how to turn man into the wind, and it knew nothing about love. In my travels around the world, I've often seen people speaking of love and looking towards the heavens, the wind said, furious at having to acknowledge its own limitations. Maybe it's better to ask heaven. Well, then, help me to do that, the boy said. Fill this place with a sandstorm so that so that it blots out the sun. Then I can look to heaven without blinding myself. So the wind blew with all its strength, and the sky was filled with sand. The sun turned into a gold disk. At the camp, it was difficult to see anything. The men of the desert were already familiar with that wind. They called it Simoon. They called it the Simoon. It was worse than any storm, and it was worse than a storm at sea. Their horses cried out, and all their weapons were filled with sand. On the heights, one of the commanders turned to the chief and said, "Maybe we had better end this." They could barely see the boy. Their faces were covered with the blue cloths, and their eyes showed fear. "Let's stop this," another commander said. "I want to see the greatness of Allah," the chief said with respect. "I want to see how a man turns himself into the wind." But he made a mental note of the names of the two men who had expressed their fear. As soon as the wind stopped, he was going to remove them from their commands, because true men of the desert were not afraid. Then the wind told me that you know about love, said the boy to the sun. "If you know about love, you also know about the soul of the world, because it's made of love." "From where I am," the sun said, "I can see the soul of the world. It communicates with my soul, and together we cause the plants to grow and the sheep to seek out shade. From where I am, and I'm a long way from earth, I learned how to love. I know that if I came even a little bit closer to earth, everything there would die, and the soul of the world would no longer exist. So we contemplate each other, and we want each other, and I gift it life and warmth, and it gives me my reason for living." "So you know about love," the boy said. "I know the soul of the world, and I know the soul of the world, because we have talked at great lengths to each other during this endless trip through the universe. It tells me that its greatest problem is that, up until now, only the minerals and vegetables understood that all things are one, that there's no need for iron to be the same as copper, or copper to be the same as gold. Each performs its own exact function as a unique being, and everything would be a symphony of peace if the hand that wrote all this had stopped on the fifth day of creation. But there was a sixth day," the sun went on. "You are wise because you observe everything from a distance," the boy said. "But you don't know about love. If there hadn't been a sixth day, man would not exist. Copper would always just be copper, and lead just lead. It's true that everything has its personal destiny, but one day that personal legend will be realized. So each thing has to transform itself into something better, and to acquire a new personal legend, until someday the soul of the world becomes one thing only." The sun thought about that and decided to shine more brightly. The wind, which was enjoying the conversation, started to blow with greater force, so that the sun would not blind the boy. "This is why alchemy exists," the boy said, "so that everyone will search for his treasure, find it, and then want to be better than he was in his former life. Lead will play its role until the world has no further need for lead, and then lead will have to turn itself into gold. That's what alchemists do. They show that when we strive to become better than we are, everything around us becomes better too." "Well, why did you say that I don't know about love?" the sun asked the boy. "Because it's not love to be static like the desert, nor is it love to roam the world like the wind, and it's not love to see everything from a distance like you do. Love is the force that transforms and improves the soul of the world. When I first reached through to it, I thought the soul of the world was perfect. But later I could see that it was like the aspects of creation, and had its own passions and wars. It is we who nourish the soul of the world, and the world we live in will be better or worse depending on whether we become better or worse. And that's where the power of love comes in. Because when we love, we always strive to become better than we are." "So what do you want of me?" the sun asked. "I want you to help me to turn myself into the wind. Nature knows me as the wisest being in creation," the sun said. "But I don't know how to turn you into the wind." "Then whom should I ask?" The sun thought for a minute. The wind was listening closely, and wanted to tell every corner of the world that the sun's wisdom had its limitations. that it was unable to deal with this boy who spoke the language of the world. Speak to the hand that wrote all, the sun said. The wind screamed with delight and blew harder than ever. The tents were being blown from their ties to the earth, and the animals were being freed from their tethers. On the cliff, the men clutched at each other as they sought to keep from being blown away. The boy turned to the hand that wrote all. As he did so, he sensed that the universe had fallen silent, and he decided not to speak. A current of love rushed from his heart, and the boy began to pray. It was a prayer that he had never said before, because it was a prayer without words or pleas. His prayer didn't give thanks for his sheep having found new pastures. It didn't ask the boy to help. It didn't ask that the boy be able to sell more crystal. It didn't beseech that the woman he met continue to wait his return. In the silence, the boy understood that the desert, the wind, and the sun were also trying to understand the signs written by the hand, and were seeking to follow their paths and to understand what had been written on a single emerald. He saw that the omens were scattered throughout the earth and in space, and that there was no reason or significance attached to their appearance. He could see that not the desert, nor the wind, nor the sun, nor people knew why they had been created, but that the hand had a reason for all of this, and that only the hand could perform miracles or transform the sea into desert or man into wind, because only the hand understood that it was a larger design that had moved the universe to the point at which 6 days of creation had evolved into a master work. The boy reached through to the soul of the world and saw that it was a part of the soul of God. And he saw that the soul of God was his own soul, and that he, a boy, could perform miracles. Whew! Oh, oh. Let's see what time it is. All right. Maybe I should give this a few more minutes. The simoon blew that day as hard as hard as it had never blown before. For generations thereafter, Arabs recounted the legend of a boy who had turned himself into the wind, almost destroying a military camp in defiance of the most powerful chief in the desert. When simoon ceased to blow, everyone looked to the place where the boy had been, but he was no longer there. He was standing next to a sand-covered sentinel on the far side of the camp. The men were terrified at his sorcery, but there were two people who were smiling: the alchemist, because he had found his perfect disciple, and the chief, because that disciple had understood the glory of God. The following day, the general bade the boy and the alchemist farewell and provided them with an escort party to accompany them as far as they chose. They rode for an entire day. Toward the end of the afternoon, they came upon a Coptic monastery. The alchemist dismounted and told the escorts that they could return to camp. From here on, you will be alone, the alchemist said. You are only 3 hours from the pyramids. Thank you, the boy said. You taught me the language of the world. I only invoked what you already knew. The alchemist knocked on the gate of the monastery. A monk dressed in black came to the gates. They spoke for a few minutes in the Coptic tongue, and the alchemist bade the boy enter. I asked him to let me use the kitchen for a while, the alchemist smiled. They went to the kitchen at the back of the monastery. The alchemist lighted the fire, and the monk brought them some lead, which the alchemist placed on an iron pan. When the lead had become liquid, the alchemist took from his pouch the strange yellow egg. He scraped from it a sliver as thin as a hair, wrapped it in wax, and added it to the pan in which the lead had been melted. The mixture took on a reddish color, almost the color of blood. The alchemist removed the pan from the fire and set it aside to cool. As he did so, he talked with the monk about the tribal wars. I think they're going to last for a long time, he said to the monk. The monk was irritated. The caravans had been stopped at Giza for some time, waiting for the wars to end. But God's will be done, the monk said. Exactly, answered the alchemist. When the pan had cooled, the monk and the boy looked at it dazzled. The lead had dried into the shape of the pan, but it was no longer lead, it was gold. Will I learn to do that someday? The boy asked. This was my personal legend, not yours, the alchemist answered. But I wanted to show you that it was possible. They returned to the gates of the monastery. There, the alchemist separated the disc into 4 parts. This is for you, he said, holding one of the parts out to the monk. It's for your generosity to the pilgrims. But this payment goes well beyond my generosity, the monk. But this payment goes well beyond my generosity, the monk answered. Don't say that again. Life might be listening and give you less the next time. The alchemist turned to the boy. This is for you, to make up for what you gave to the general. The boy was about to say that it was much more than he had given to the general, but he kept quiet because he had heard what the alchemist said to the monk. And this is for me, said the alchemist, keeping one of the parts, because I have to return to the desert where there are tribal wars. He took the 4th part and handed it to the monk. This is for the boy, if he ever needs it. But I'm going in search of my treasure, the boy said. I'm very close to it now, and I am certain you will find it, the alchemist said. Then why this? Because you have already lost your savings twice, once to the thief and once to the general. I'm an old superstitious Arab, and I believe in our proverbs. There's one that says everything that happens once can never happen again, but everything that happens twice will surely happen a 3rd time. They mounted their horses. I think I'm going to stop there. Okay, everyone, we are arriving. We are arriving. So that is the completion of the reading of The Alchemist for this day. I will be back at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time tomorrow to continue the reading of The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. And I am certain that we will be done by Thursday. So I want to thank you all for tuning in. My name is Cassandra Faye Floyd, also known as the Daughter of the Fates, founder of the Temple of Evolutionary Emergence. Check out my YouTube channel. If you go to YouTube, you have to put the @ at Daughter of the Fates, spelled out as one word in the search engine. There I will be. Check out my YouTube channel. Send links of those presentations that I've done to others so that they can check out my YouTube channel. If you have not yet, please subscribe to my YouTube channel, and I will see you again tomorrow. Hopefully it is a little less hot than it is today. Care for your hair, care for your hearts, care for your spirit, sleep well, and prepare for this most magnanimous blue moon coming upon us in a couple of days. Okay, get your witching work in. All right, good night. Take care.